Chair.
Yes.
Probably you can consider using Debate Keeper. Since yesterday, probably you guys had a few problems, right? So you guys could consider
Mm-mm.
using Debate Keeper and then like just turn on the volume as high as possible, and whenever it bells, just put it close to your microphone, I guess, earphone, whatever it is, so that people could
Debate.
actually Debate Keeper. It's on Play Store. Keeper, it's like Keeper.
Keeper. Is it the
Kee.
bell? Kee.
Yeah.
Is it the bell? The bell apps?
Yeah. It automates the process lah. So you just press the start button and the timing goes, and then for the first 6 and 7th minute, they will just ring the bell accordingly lah. So it's easier
I
for you. You don't have to like put up some signs like yesterday. I saw like put six
see.
one. Yeah, probably easier. And
Yeah.
also, yeah,
Thank
just
you
turn on
very
your
much.
mic lah. Just turn on your mic so that people could hear the bell from your phone.
Alright, kejap I tengah download. By the way, kita dah live tau.
Okay, cool.
Alia, can you check whether how many viewers are there on YouTube?
um, 3. For now, 3.
I'm not sure whether the other two edges are watching or not because they have not replied my message.
Maybe tak buka pun lagi kot. Nak start dulu ke ataupun nak tunggu lagi 2?
Uh,
I
they'll
think
be
we
watching from
should.
YouTube. Wait, I'll try to contact them first.
I think we should
You sure?
we should wait for the edge.
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
I'll confirm whether they are watching or not.
Oh,
Once
do we have enough edge here? How many edge
Like,
here?
we have one.
One only. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, for
Only the
streamer only
chair.
one.
Yeah,
Oh,
only
yeah.
chair will
Only the
watch
chair.
inside.
Sorry, a bit blur early in the morning.
It's okay. Actually, there's 4 edge tapi satu je yang masuk dalam stream. Yang lain tengok dekat live.
Yeah.
Sekejap ni. Debate.
UKM got provide makan-makan or not?
Makan-makan. What actually?
Nothing.
Korang semua dekat college. Korang semua dekat college ke?
Yeah.
Oh. Sunway is from Sunway University, is it?
Yeah, Sunway.
Both Sunway U and Sunway College.
Do you guys have any problem with the internet?
Nope.
So far, so good.
I don't think I'll be able to turn on my camera in case the Wi-Fi is. Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah, me too. My bandwidth is quite low.
For Troy Soo Junior, is it Mr. or Miss?
Mr. That's me.
Oh, hi.
Good morning.
Morning. And for adjudicators like you, Jen, are you Mr. or Miss? Mr., right?
Yes.
Okay.
Just call our names, it's okay. It's like, for example, yeah, you don't have to like Mr. or something.
Because it's on the screen.
Sure. You just call us by our name. It's totally fine. We don't mind at all. Yeah.
All right.
Or like you could just say, let's invite Prime Minister, for example. So you don't have to even say the name. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Oh,
You okay, dude?
Alright, Ali, I think you can start now.
Can start, eh? Alright.
Yeah.
Okay. If my voice is slow, you guys can boleh bagi tahu, eh?
Okay. Okay.
Okay, let's start in 3, 2, 1. Okay, Assalamualaikum and a very good day to all present today. Welcome to the second round of English debate competition, Intervarsity Science E-Debate Challenge 2021. The motion for this debate is, this house will grant human rights to sentient robots. I will be the chairperson and the timekeeper for room number 1. Let me now introduce the debaters to you. Okay, acting as the government team for this debate is the team from Swing, with Mr. Troy Soo Jun Ye as the Prime Minister, Mr. Afdal Han as the Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Tuan Ashraf as the Government Whip. The reserve is Mr. Afdal. And acting as the opposition team for this debate is the team from Sunway, with Miss Wen Jun as the opposition leader, Miss Shirin as the second opposition speaker, Miss Gitanjali as the opposition whip, and the reserve is Miss Shirin. Okay, our panel of adjudicators for today consists of Mr. Lai Yu Jian, Mr. Muhammad Jazli bin Jabaruddin, Mr. Patrick Seo William, and Mr. Amir Shazwan bin Zaili. Okay, now we come to our debate today. To open the case from the government team, I call upon the Prime Minister to start the debate session.
Hello, good morning. Okay, am I audible? If yes, I'm audible, right? Okay. I will time myself too. I will count 3, 2, 1 later. Okay. Oh, thank you. So, I would like to accept my POI. You can through the mic through here means that you can unmute yourself and POI me, and then I will accept or either reject it. Okay. So let me time myself. Okay. So I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Good morning, everybody here. So when a humanoid robot Sophia is granted citizenship in Saudi Arabia, the first robot to receive the citizenship and anywhere in the world, many people are outraged. Some were upset because she's now had more human rights, more rights than a human woman living in the same country. Others just thought it was a ridiculous PR stunt. So this Sophia big news brought for a lingering question, especially as scientists continue to develop advanced and human-like AI machines, so that which led to our motion today. This house would grant the human right to the sentient robot. So before I start my my argument, I would like to define three key terms in this motion. Firstly, would be the sentient robot. What is a sentient robot? Sentient robot is the robot that have the capacity to be aware of feeling, sensation, and consciousness. So secondly, human rights. So human rights are the basic rights and freedom that belong to every person in the world from birth until death. So that apply regardless of where are you from, where you believe, or how you choose to live your life. That can be never taken away, although they are sometimes be restricted. For example, if a person break the law or in interest of national security. So these basic rights are based on shared value like dignity, fairness, equality, respect, and independence. So these values are defined and protected by the constitution law. So thirdly, I would like to emphasize on the word grant. So grant is the term that we agree to give or allow something request to. So in other word is that we agree and admit something to someone that something is true. So with this word grant, so humans still have the upper hand compared to the robot. So are robot equivalent to humans nowadays? I would say no, because robots are not human. Even as a robot getting smarter, and if their smartness exceed human, smartness doesn't change the fact that the robots are of a different from humans. I'm not downgrading what robots are or will be. I'm a realist that there are technologies to support humanities. So should robot given the rights? Yes. Humanities are obligation towards our ecosystem and social system. So robot will be part of these two systems. We are morally obligated to protect them, design them, to protect themselves against the misuse or mistreat, and also be morally harmonized with the humanity. So this is the whole stack of rights that should be given. So here are two. First, the right to protected by our legal and our ethical system, and the right to be designed to be trustworthy. So this is a technologically fit for purpose and connectively and socially compatible. For example, safety, ethical, and legal aware. So the Saudi Arabian grant of citizenship to a sentient robot is simply a joke, but not a good one. So Even with the impressive achievement of deep learning system in the robot, so the current capabilities of robots and AI system fall so far below the capabilities of humans. So there's much more appropriate to be treated as a manufactured tools. But this is an important difference between the humans and robot. The human beings is unique and irreplaceable individual with a finite lifespan, but robot, they are computation system and can be backup, store, and then retrieve or duplicated even in a new hardware. But even so we already face and but mostly avoid the question is like about the rights and responsibilities of cooperation. A well-known problem with proper corporate personhood that is used to deflect responsibility of these misdeeds from the individual humans to the corporation. So I will come to my first argument of today that why do we deserve to? Why do the robots have deserve to the human rights? Because of the harm and pain. So human nowadays mistreat robots. So in a scenes in the comedy series The Good Place, so the female the character is trying to turn down the robot, trying to terminate the robot, but the robot begs the human character not to terminate the robot. So when the humans instinctively withdraw in sympathy, so the human reminds them that it's an artificial thing, but the robot refused the human character to terminate itself. So imagine that a robot which is threatened, assault, struggles, or staggers, or trying to flee, and a petition over humans, over people for assistance. So such a robot might prompt our pity and or our cruelty. So in a way that goes beyond response to this fictional story. So in this way, it perhaps makes sense that the cruelty or kindness towards the robot should be encouraged, and towards the sentient robots. Even we know that robot is just a robot. So even sentient animal have a minimal legal protection. So why do sentient robot couldn't have the same? So if the sentient robot could shape our character in a significant way, so it may be the young children are most affected, as children's character are especially imprisonable. So some people believe that some people believe that that the subconsciously attribute sentience to robots. So our treatments to the robot influence our treatments to other living creatures. So moreover, people tend to say that the robots are not sentient, lack of feeling. But now we are arguing about sentient robot, which is the robot have the feeling too. So while some argue that's impossible to be cruel or kind to them, so that isn't the entire obvious in the instance that they can struggle about. So perhaps we should hope that sentient robots encourage the kindle actions in human in general rather than the cruel ones. So perhaps robot anti-cruelty laws are excessive in the liberal society. So, but as robots increasingly become part of our lives, often make decisions without human control, we have a good reason to monitor the influence they have to us. So I'll proudly rest my case. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that speech. The timing was 7 minutes and 13 seconds. Okay, to open the case from the opposition team, I call upon the leader of opposition to continue the debate session.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. Right, starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. So what has site government told you so far? They've told you that, we should protect the rights of robots. And sure, in this debate today, we as opposition do agree that robots with sentience should be protected, but that doesn't automatically equivalent to giving them human rights, because human rights may not, in our case, is not the best policy to protect these sentient robots. So before going into rebuttals, I'd like to start with a redefinition of what sentience is. Sentience is self-awareness, but it only includes certain basic feelings such as happiness or sadness, because in today's age, at the rate which technology is developing, robots, sure, they might have the ability to feel feelings such as happiness and sadness, but in no near time the ability to feel even smaller and types of emotions, for example, empathy, sympathy, anger, and hope and whatnot, because these are emotions we developed through living in society. Right. So just to clarify, robots do not have autonomy as well.
POI?
No, sorry. Robots do not have autonomy as well in decision making, because we design robots to fulfill a certain purpose. So by definition, sentience does not include these. Now, just like to define human rights, just because the government failed to give certain examples of what human rights look like. This is education, nutrition, freedom to religion, thought, cultural beliefs, political freedom, like rights to vote, economical rights, for example, right to adequate standards of living and right to work. Right. So now, we do know that in the world right now, what does the world look like? We see the world is skyrocketing in terms of advancements of technology. We've seen many robots in the manufacturing sector, but more than ever now, robots with sentience are being developed to even cater to service sectors, for example, taking care of people. So robots are becoming more popular, and we on the opposition side do agree that sure, they're essentially becoming more important to our lives, and we as opposition do have the obligation to protect robot rights as well. But we believe that by using human rights, this is not the best policy to protect robots, and that will be covered in my arguments later. So this debate is not about whether sentient robots should get rights, but what kind of rights are best for them. Right, so a burden of proof would be to offer you a better policy that can cater to these sentient robots and why human rights are not the best for them. So to start with a few rebuttals. So what the government has brought up is that, animals have animal rights too because they're sentient beings. True, but the thing we have to realize is that animals, the rights they have are catered to them. They're called animal rights. They don't have human rights. We don't provide human rights to animals because animals need different things, just like robots do. As such, robots do need robot rights instead of human rights. Now, I'd like to move on to my arguments about why robots need different rights and why our policy would be better. So, robots, as we know, they are principally different from humans, even if they are given a degree of sentience. So you have to recognize that robots have different characteristics, and they aren't built to live lives like how we were born to. They were built for certain purposes, and as such, they have different characteristics. So our first premise would be how robots have different decision-making processes. So how do humans make decisions? In long-term decisions, sure, we do calculate, we do plan, but most of the time we still go with the flow and just go with our hearts. For example, what we want to do in the long term. And in short-term decisions, we are more than often motivated by impulses, and we follow our heart rather than our head. For example, making decisions based on feelings of anger, sympathy, empathy, trying to save someone, or like short-term pleasure. And as such, we need rights such as freedom of speech to express our emotions. We need the right to autonomy to make decisions, and we need the right to have freedom of acting on our feelings. But robots are different. We have to notice that robots make calculated decisions, and most of these decisions are thought of for long-term benefits, which will result in the most well-being in the long term. And robots don't act based on impulses because, as I've mentioned earlier, they don't have small little emotions which are developed through growth in society, such as empathy and whatnot. So as such, they have different decision-making processes, and we have to recognize that. My second premise is that robots, they don't have the same needs as humans. Now, as humans, we are born, and we need things like education and schooling, and we need rights to, that's why we have free education rights, for example, rights to free and compulsory primary education for all. We also need healthcare rights, for example, rights to protection from diseases, vaccinations, checkups, and rights to safe and sanitary water and environments. We also need rights such as rights to nutrition, eating food, having sufficient like balanced
POI?
diet or whatnot. And sorry,
Yeah, I
reject.
am.
Sorry, I'll reject for now. Okay. And we also need rights, for example, rights to clothing and belief of religion. But we have to notice that robots need different rights because robots, they are born with knowledge. They are programmed with knowledge. They don't need things like education and schooling, and they constantly improve on their own in today's age of like technological advancements. And therefore, they have no need for education, which is a human right, which is not suitable for them. They don't need to go to hospitals because they instead need to go to like mechanics because they are not susceptible to like bacteria, viruses, and they don't need vaccinations and whatnot. And what they need are different. And robots don't feed on food; they feed on electricity. Robots don't believe in religion; they operate based on usually science and calculations. So that comes to my third premise about how we and robots are different. We as humans are built to how we are today based on our collective experiences in society. For example, we might face things like systemic racism in our groups. We might face things such as sexism, and like we might go do things together such as like advancing political campaigns. We as humans coexist together, and we depend on the relationships we form on each other, and we depend on memories to make up who we are. For example, experiences with tradition, culture, and heritage, that makes up who we are. But robots, they are different. The alternate robots don't operate on collective experiences and whatnot. And with how I've told you robots are different than humans in 3 ways, I'll provide with you an alternative of a policy that would suit robots better. This is robot rights. For example, we have to develop a framework to give rights in line with what robots need and want. For example, for robots to be happy and whatnot, they don't need certain kind of rights like rights to freedom of speech, but they need other rights. So what kind of rights do robot rights look like? So this will be things like frequent maintenance, upkeeping, and caring for them, which makes them happy because unlike humans, robots don't get happy from buying stuff from Shopee or whatnot. So another thing is, for example, protection from abuse by humans. For example, humans assembling and disassembling these robots and programming their brain and whatnot. So we have told you so far why robots are different, why they need to have different rights, and how the government did not mention to you how human rights cater to robots specifically. So my next speaker is going to talk more about how it would affect others. And with that, I'm proud to oppose. Sorry.
All right, I would like to thank the speaker for their speech. The timing was 7 minutes and 19 seconds. Okay, to continue our debate today, I call upon the Deputy Prime Minister to continue the case for their side.
Madam Chair, we are a firm believer of technology, and we believe the technology to actually create a sentient robot exists, and the mathematical model or whatever AI that implements that goes into the robot could actually, it's possible to actually make a robot that has feelings, that could feel the pain, which our opposition side has not engaged with us on that. They need to concede on that this kind of technology exists, so that we could actually debate on the matter, right? Before that, a few rebuttals on, they are trying to say that robots are differently built, has different feelings, go through sexism, racism. They need to understand that our robot right now, sentient robots, go through the same thing as well. They have their own looks. The way the robot is being built, they have their own shapes, they have their own looks, they have their own colors of robots. So they actually could experience those kind of things like what humans experience. And that is why today we would actually want to propose human rights to the robot itself. Before that, a few clarifications on our side, right? We are trying to impose um, the human right in a sense of we are trying to give them the right for them to actually protect themselves physically and mentally, Mr. Speaker. That's why we believe that we should have this kind of this model could actually help the robot to actually survive and lead to a better life, whatever life they are trying to lead in this world, whereby we have explained that they are actually doing some things regarding security. They are doing some things regarding manufacturing, for example, etc. Right. I'm going to talk about 2 things. Number 1 is importance of giving them human rights, and number 2 is why does it lead to room for better innovations in the future, right? importance of giving them human rights, I could explain this into 5 points. Number one, we can actually prohibit them from getting from being harmed. This is this is this means that, for example, if the robot get abused in the workplace, for example, they have to work extra time, or they're getting yelled at, or they're getting tortured, they are not being um, taken care of properly, like for example, they have not been maintained properly, um, they are treated inhumanely, they are asked to work extra hours, for example, blah 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 blah. So this kind of things create a robot that has um, this create harms the robot in a sense that they are feeling dejected, they are feeling rejected, they are feeling harmed by those people that owns them, right? For example, yeah. And number two, this is true because we actually want to protect this robot in a sense, because whatever world that the opposition is trying to pursue, with they claim that they want to give a best policy, but I've never heard any policy from them, in a sense that they did not actually elaborate on what kind of policy they would actually enhance to actually deploy to these robots to actually give them human right, or whatever robot rights that they want to pursue that could actually protect this robot. But in our case, we actually cater for these robots, right? Because we gave them rights for them to actually flourish in this world, and this protection mechanism could actually protect these robots from harmful things that I've mentioned before, like abuse, torture, inhumane, degrading, etc. Right. And number three, this is true because we are giving them the right to liberty. Because, for example, if you're a robot, for example, you're in a room, you're being trapped, you can't, like we can take like for example, right now we have a restricted movement control order because of COVID and whatnot. So this kind of thing restrict our movement, restricts our daily needs, restrict our daily activities. So these robots have feelings like us, right? So they want to do those activities, they want to carry out those movements. For example, they want to go to work, they want to go to jogging, etc. So this robot have needs those right to actually they need this liberty right for them to actually have their movement not being oppressed by certain people. And as well as, for example, um, if they were forced to do something without their consent, so those robots will actually feel tortured by those people, right? Because in a sense, this robot in the end have their own feelings, they are programmed to have their own feelings, right? And number four, um, we are pursuing the right for them to not be discriminated in a sense, because we know that this robot have their own looks, they have their own shape, they have their own height, they have their own they have their own structure, for example. So, and in the end, they have their own color. So what does this mean? This means that there is a room for people to actually discriminate this robot, in a sense that they say, hey, you're like a big fat robot, you're like ugly, you're like you they say racism chance to your to the robot. So in the end, this robot will feel dejected and so forth, right? So in the end, what we told you, that the impact of this human right that we gave them, which is exclusively on the physical protection as well as the mental protection, we actually lead a better life for this robot. We have catered for, and the opposition has failed to cater and engage on this sense, right? And yeah, on the second part, where I will explain about, it opens up more room for innovation in a sense, because number one, it is true because we give the protection to the innovations. Like for example, if you're an innovator and your robots get discriminated, get tears down, get beat down, for example, and there's a lot of damage to the robot. So this hinders of those innovators to actually create those robots again and again and again. And this robot, with those feeling that they have, they will feel those torture that is being happening to them. And number two, um, we create like an international recognition so that the humans are more accountable for their action. Because when we give them the right, so there's a lot of attention, there's a lot of transparency goes towards recognizing this robot as something that is human, like us humans. So in the end, this creates a better overview, in a sense, so that everyone respect the rights of robots and not discriminate and not torture or degrading or whatever, racism, sexism, whatever, right? So, and in the end, these innovations of robot will be even more rapid because of this stuff. And innovators could actually spend more and more and more to improve the robot. And in comparison to whatever they're trying to say, that the technology doesn't exist, blah 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 blah. But in the end, I've explained to you by this point that when we gave these rights to the robots, and there's a lot of international recognition and accountability coming on, so the improvement of technology will happen. So there's a lot more technological advancement that could happen in the field to complement the robot better. And in the end, I'm very proud to propose. Thank you.
All right. I would like to thank the speaker for their remarks. The timing was 7 minutes and 8 seconds. Okay, now I call upon the Deputy Leader of Opposition to continue the case for their side.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes. Wait.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. All right, give me a second. Let me just set up my timer, and POIs verbally, please. Thank you very much. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. The burden on the government bench since the start of this debate was to somehow prove how human rights actively benefit robots to the point where it merited a national policy or some kind of implementation of a policy. Recognize that they've never given you any sort of mechanization as to why robots need the full extent of human rights or how those benefits can accrue on their side. I think it's ironic they accuse us of lacking a policy when they in turn never told you any sort of analysis as to how somehow conferring human rights onto robots who don't need those rights to begin with because of fundamental differences in needs can actually get the benefits they want to champion for. I'm going to take their government bench at the best case, and I'm going to argue on the grounds of, in a world where we actually buy into their policy and give robots human rights, why it actually turns out to be worse for robots and people around them altogether. Two key responses against the government bench. All my other rebuttals are going to be integrated in my arguments. Firstly, recognize that they gave you no mechanization as to why robots actually require the full extent of human rights or how those benefits accrue on their side. The only justification we got was that they feel things as well and that they have to have some sort of protection against workplace harassment or robot racism and things like that. Recognize that sentience only requires or only necessitates self-awareness, and robots still operate on algorithms, which means that at the very least, they're going to have some sort of level of sentience, in which case they still can block off feelings of racism or discrimination against each other because of the fact that robots do not operate on the same feelings of prejudice as humans. But secondly, even if we're generous and assume that's the case, they've never given us any analysis as to why that sort of oppression happens to robots to begin with, and why that's even a problem we should address. There was no examples as to how actually robots are being exploited in the labor force to the point where they merit some sort of legal protection, and the only arguments coming out of DLO's entire speech was based on pure rhetoric and ideals. Second key argument is in terms of what they talked about on the case of accountability in recognizing the sentience and autonomy of robots. This directly clashes with my arguments because I'm going to talk to you how I implementing this policy is actually going to make lives and the existence of robots a lot harder. Two main questions I'm going to answer. Number one, how would granting human rights to robots make things worse for existing humans? And number two, how would granting human rights to robots make things worse for the robots themselves? First question, how is it going to make things worse for existing humans? Recognize that human rights in society as it is are already not consistent. Minorities who are already human, i.e. racial minorities, still face discrimination, which already proves the extent of which human rights are not homogeneous in society. It's principally unjustified for us to want to champion a policy that gives these same human rights through robots who don't go through the same collective experiences as humans, in light of how we can't even take care of our own humans. Firstly, the practical harms of this is that sentient robots would probably be given fairer treatment than humans. In the case where we actually want to confer human rights on them. Why is this likely to be true? Because A, it's a lot easier for robots to be appeased in the form of human rights as opposed to taking into account the complex structural issues faced by minorities. And B, because of the fact that robots or sentient robots have a lot more to offer in terms of economic assets, there's probably going to be priority to cater to the rights of these to the rights of these sentient robots as opposed to actually addressing the systemic issues faced by humans on the ground. But even if that doesn't happen, and even if we don't say that robots are going to be given fairer treatment, the exclusive harm you get from the policy that the government is telling you about is the backlash against robots because of the feelings of frustration by these people. Second question, how is granting rights to robots going to make it worse for existing humans? Recognize that human rights in society as it is are already not consistent. Minorities who are already human, i.e. racial minorities, still face discrimination, which already proves the extent of which human rights are not homogeneous in society. It's principally unjustified for us to want to champion a policy that gives these same human rights through robots how is granting human rights to robots going to make things worse actually for the robots? And this directly engages with the DLO's argument about how we should recognize the sentience of robots and how it's going to lead to innovation and further things like that. Recognize that it's far more likely for backlash to happen against these robots instead of actually embracing them because of two things. Number one, people are frustrated at the fact that in society, with all the inequality that's happening, we're somehow conferring the same human rights that we have rejected for our own people somehow onto robots. Number two, even if people don't care about the sentience of robots, regardless of the question of whether or not robots are human and the whole philosophical debate of whether or not, like, what makes us human, the perception of the fact that robots are inherently different from us, it's what drives people to be frustrated at this policy. Because regardless if you want to get into the nitty-gritty of sentience being something that makes you human, people don't think robots are human, and people don't think robots are one of their own. These feelings of prejudice and frustration against those robots are going to culminate, and it's going to lead to backlash against them. Why is this bad for the robots? Twofold. Number one, on the same premise that the government bench told us, robots feel things, and they can feel pain and things like sadness, which means in a world where it's far more likely that these robots face backlash and like criticism against society, it's like very harmful in that they're going to experience those same that same hurt and pain that the government bench wants to avoid so much. But secondly, the practical harms of this is you impede the innovation and the utility of these robots in society, because backlash can take the form of boycotting automated services or industries, not wanting to automate your workspace or not wanting to have robots in your workspace because you are fundamentally opposed to the idea of these like metallic beings having the same human rights as you do. This also can look at like the calling for the robot manufacturer to be discontinued because you don't want your status as a human being to be threatened in that now a robot has the same identity as you in the eyes of the law. This directly engages with all of the material coming out of government bench in that on their highest ground, even if we concede that their policy exists, it's more likely to be detrimental to the robots on the ground. How is our counter policy better? Before I get into that, any POIs? No? All right. So how is our counter policy better? Threefold. Number one, we've told you in Prime Minister's speech how we actually take into account the fundamental needs of robots themselves instead of just putting them under a blanket solution of human rights. The principal argument that came out of the Prime Minister's speech was that animals have legal protection as well. But the logic in that argument is that animal rights are specifically catered to animals. They don't have the same rights as we do. They don't have to get education, have freedom of religion, because we know for a fact that it's not necessary for these animals. The rights we give animals are specifically catered to what they need. This looks like shelter, the right to like not be exploited and not be hunted, and that very same premise should apply to robots. They never proved to us on government bench why is it specifically true that human rights is exactly what we need to solve the problems that robots face. We agree that to a certain extent robots can be subjugated to like some sort of exploitation, but we don't think that full-on human rights should be the solution to that problem. If you want to solve the problems of like, I don't know, workspace protection for robots, the other framework in which you directly cater policies for robots is far better. Why is that so? It's because you don't cover up like the problems robots face under the blanket assumption of human rights. You specifically talk about the recommendations that you can hold in place for robots themselves, which makes the environment robots live in a lot healthier, specifically for them, because you take into account their actual needs instead of just assuming they are the same as humans just because of sentience. Second reason why our policy is better. We avoid incurring the backlash that we would exclusively get on government bench because we don't conflate the identity of humans to robots. Again, regardless of the philosophical or like the principal nature of this argument, people are not going to see robots or not going to accept robots as one of their own, which means the backlash you get is going to be regardless of whether or not you agree that robots are sentient and should be considered human. People are far more likely on our side to actually advocate for robot rights because they understand that robots do in fact have sentience but are still distinguished from humans. This means that we can recognize, like how we do with animals, that despite being sentient, animals also deserve rights. We can recognize that despite being sentient, robots deserve rights in their own dimension apart from humans. For all those reasons, oppose.
All right, I would like to thank the speaker for their remarks. The timing was 7 minutes and 9 seconds. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, and the honorable adjudicators, I shall now call upon the government whip to rebut.
Mr. Speaker, just imagine that I own a robot and I scolded at my robot just because it doesn't make me an ice cream. So who are fighting for these robots actually? So Mr. Speaker, before I start my speech, in my speech today, I'm gonna divide my speech into 3 things. The first one, I'm gonna show you in terms of arguments which side are better in terms of understanding towards this debate. Secondly, I'm gonna show you which side is actually cater both cater the stakeholders into this debate. And third, I'm going to show you what will happen if we accept the motion or if we reject the motion. So let's first go to the rebuttals from the opposition side. So the LO said that human rights are not the option. It means that she mentioned it so many times that human rights are not the option. But the thing is that she didn't mention us what are the policies that are actually cater for the robots. Doesn't come up with the how to apply this, other than human rights towards robot. So it came after the second speaker mentioned about the policy just now. So it's a bit too late into this debate. So she said that robots are different from humans, which might means that robots have made calculated decision. This is what you need to understand about the sentient robots. Yes, I agree that robots make the calculated decision, but the outcome of the robots themselves, they have the same as humans. It means that they deliver the work as same as humans. They deliver the things. Even the method of thinking of coming up with the solutions are different than humans, which by means that we instead of using the calculation, we use the emotions. But the sentient robots, they are not just only calculated the decision, but they come up with the emotion as well. So it means that at the end of the day, the outcomes of the robots are the same as the humans in terms of works, in terms of completing the task. So we believe that just because of this, because of the capability of these robots could deliver the same as human, we believe that they deserve the rights. But you have to understand from the opposition side that not all the rights are applicable towards the robots. That's the reason why the first speaker mentioned about certain mentioned about the certain human rights that is applicable for robots, for example, like physical and mental harm. Because we believe that Sophia, which is the robot that is mentioned by my first speaker, could emulate 60 expressions, and she is the UN Development Programme's innovation to promote technical and investment cooperation among nations. So for centuries, we have humans to do this job, but now we have the robots to do these things. But apparently, these robots are not protected by any laws. They are not protected by the rights to do the jobs. Even she's doing the same, even she's or it is doing the same job as human did before. So, right. Yeah. And then we're talking about the policy. Even if there is one policy towards the robots, so what are those policies? Is never mentioned by the first speaker. And the opposition side never mentioned how will it protects the robot and it won't be violated in terms of physical, in terms of mental, in terms of their feelings. They never mention about how it actually will protect the robots, even if there is a policy at the end of the day. So come up with the deputy leader of opposition. She says that having human rights towards the robot it will make it worse for the humans and also for the robots itself, because there will be a backlash from the humans to those who don't get the human rights, and then suddenly we give the human rights towards the robots, and still the humans don't get some of the humans don't get that kind of rights. But there's the thing: human can fight for that rights themselves, but not like robots, because robots they just have the emotions, they have the feelings, they have those kind of threats, but they are not capable to fight against to fight for something that is against them. So that is why we believe that because humans are capable to fight for them rights, and robots do not have that capability to fight for that rights. That's why we are giving the rights towards the robots, because we as humans with the with this kind of emotions. I believe that oppositions are not robots because they have emotions as well. But we as humans, we have the emotions, we have the feelings. It means that we feel sorry for the robots who cannot, who barely fight for their rights, who cannot fight for their rights, even if they get threatened. For example, violated in terms of works, violated in terms of physical. For example, one robot cannot deliver what it takes. The employer will crush them out or throw them away. So this is the things that we are going to protect them. Not all the human rights are applicable towards them, but for a certain extent, that is the thing that we want to protect from the government side. So let's move on to what is the implications toward the stakeholders today. So imagine the world where the opposition side thinks that when we give the human rights towards the towards the robots, there will be the backlash. The humans will get mad just because we give the human rights. But from a government side, what we are trying to do today is to create a more harmony world where humans can also humans are already have their rights, and the robots can also have the rights at the end of the day. It means that both of the parties, both of the stakeholders will get their chance in terms of human rights. It means that they are all protected. We are not even these robots. They are the materials that are made by humans, but for the certain extent, we believe that we are making them just to protect. We're making them to make our life better. It means that they are correlated with our human life already in this era. So it means that in our world we are cater to give both benefits towards the robots and also towards the humans. I mean, there's no fight between these kind of things. I believe the opposition watch iRobot so much that they believe the robots will be against humans just because of this. So at the end of the day, if we accept this motion, we are actually giving you a more harmonious world where we can see that we can work with we can work with something that can bring our world better together, compared to them with the worst case that could happen. But we believe from our side, from our paradigm, that we are actually giving a chance towards robots to protect themselves. We are not only protect the robots, but we are protecting the humans by giving we are protecting the humans by giving we're protecting the humans by not violating the robots. It means that there will be no such things as violating robots after this motion. With that, I rest my case. Thank you.
All right, I would like to thank the speaker for that speech. The timing was 7 minutes and 9 seconds. Okay, it is now time to listen to the rebuttals of opposition whip.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. I'll be starting in 3, 2, 1. Okay. So, government whip seems to ignore the arguments proposed by Prime Minister and by Leader of Opposition and Deputy Leader of Opposition. In terms of not providing a solution, our Prime Minister has already mentioned a more accurate policy, which is stipulated as robot rights, which actually covers more specific areas such as maintenance and preventing them from experiencing pain, such as being disassembled, and protecting their rights in terms of work. Government also doesn't recognize that human rights and worker rights are completely different things, as in doing a job and working doesn't entail that the robots need the same amount of rights that humans have. In fact, Gov does agree that not all human rights are applicable to robots, because robots don't need certain rights like the right to eat or the right to education. This is why opposition pushes for a more specific policy that caters for their needs instead of providing them with the whole extent of human rights. Gov didn't really address the backlash issue, and the issue with having backlash from the public is that, as Deputy Leader of Opposition has already stated, if we do decide to provide robots with
POI?
I'll take it in a bit. If we decide to give robots the full extent of human rights, there will be extreme backlash from the public, from the communities, and this is because there is no reason why. I'll take it in a bit. Sorry, I'll take it in a bit. There is no reason why we should give robots the full extent of human rights, and therefore the backlash will lead to the polarization of robots and the oppression of robots, and therefore robot services may be boycotted and robots may be harmed, which is exactly what the government team wants to avoid. They talk about avoiding and protecting robots, but if we give them this full policy of human rights, it may it will cause a backlash in society, and therefore the if robot services are boycotted, that would lead to stunt in the development and research of AI and technology. And it would, because a lot of people would be boycotting services, and that would be less incentive to use robots, because humans would feel threatened to be in a society where they have the same rights as a mechanical body. And Gov hasn't proven to us why human rights actually serve robots better than a more tailored policy that is specific to their needs, such as maintenance and preventing them from being disassembled, or preventing their brains from being reprogrammed by different users, all of which is not covered in the human rights policy, because these are not issues that humans face. And I will take that POI now.
Right. Do you alienate technology around you?
I'm sorry?
Do you alienate technology around you?
Could you clarify that? I don't get, or rephrase that?
Like probably like do you like boycott technology around you?
No, but I don't see how that's relevant to this debate. All right, moving on. So, sorry. Moving on. Why opposition should take this debate? Again, Gov hasn't proven that human rights serve robots better than a policy that is more suited for their needs, and they haven't provided us with any mechanization as to why robots require this full extent of human rights, and hasn't given us a solution to the backlash and the oppression they will face if we do decide to give them frankly a rather redundant policy.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, I will take that.
Don't you think that the backlash is the way how the human fight for their rights? But what about the robots? There's nobody to fight for their rights. There's a reason why we want to give the rights towards them.
We're not, again, opposition is not saying that we do not want to provide them with no rights and simply leave them to be unprotected in society. We're saying we want to give them more specific, more tailored rights, which actually protect them, rights that help them, that make sure they get maintenance, which is what ensures their happiness, and prevents them from feeling pain by preventing them from being disassembled or being used for misuse, such as having their brains reprogrammed. And in a policy which is specific for robots, there would also be rights that protect them when they do work, and they would be given worker rights. We're not saying that we're not going to give them any rights, and Gov hasn't proven to us why we should use a policy that doesn't have that doesn't specify things such as regular maintenance and preventing them from being disassembled, but instead gives them the right to education, which they don't need because they already have artificial intelligence. And with that, I'm proud to oppose. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. The timing was 7 minutes and 7 seconds. Okay, now that we have heard all the three speakers from both teams, we should take a short break of 1 minute. During this time, both the government and the opposition teams will prepare the reply speech. 1 minute starts now. All right. The time of 1 minute has ended. I shall now invite the second speaker from the opposition team to deliver the reply speech.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes.
All right. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. I think the fatal flaw coming out of all three speakers of the government bench is complete disengagement with the core of the opposition case. They ignored three of our core analyses. Number one, how robots have fundamentally different needs to humans and therefore do not merit human rights, in that human rights simply do not cater to the needs of these humans. They completely ignored our analysis about how freedom of religion, education, and all of the similar legal protection under human rights simply do not cater to the tailored needs of robots. Number two, they ignored my analysis on how society isn't all sunshine and rainbows in their acceptance of robots. They completely ignored the analysis I gave you of why it's far more likely for backlash and even harder times against robots to happen under their policy. And number three, they completely ignored how the fact that we don't necessarily want to abandon sentient robots. The only thing we're talking about on the opposition case is that we'd much rather a world in which we give them more tailored rights specific to the existence of a robot instead of just blanketing over the solution with the rhetoric of quote unquote human rights. Let's talk about what we've heard about the government bench. Recognize that you've only really heard two substantives coming out of the government bench throughout the entire debate. Number one, sentient robots deserve human rights simply because they are sentient and can feel emotion. And number two, sentient robots need protection. Recognize that those are the very same premises that opposition agrees on. We agree that sentient robots can in fact feel emotion and can in fact to a certain degree feel sentience. We also agree that sentient robots need a level of protection. The challenge in this debate is whether or not that form of protection should come in the form of human rights or an alternative counter policy where we instead look for a more tailored precision approach to the fact that these people, these objects are robots that are not the same as humans. They've never told us on the government bench why exactly the full extent of human rights is the solution to this problem, instead of going on and on about rhetoric about why legal protection is necessary against the oppression of robots and how robots don't have the power to fight up. They've never given you structural analyses as to why human rights can solve those problems under their bench. And number two, they never engage with my best case scenario on their side about how their policy of conferring human rights onto robots is actually going to occur far more harms on those robots simply because humans are not ready to accept robots as being equivalent to them. Two questions I'm going to answer to sway the debate in the opposition's favor. Number one, in which world are sentient robots actually better off? Recognize that the only thing government told you to defend how their world is better for robots is the fact that they can get legal protection and the fact that they can offer robots some sort of protection against physical or emotional abuse. Number one, recognize how the analysis that they gave us is completely reliant on rhetoric. The ideas of discrimination in robot society or like robot racism has no basis whatsoever and just going on complete rhetoric and narrative to prove a point. But B, it never engaged with the idea of, even in their best case where we concede that we want to do your policy and we're going to give robots human rights, how you're going to avoid the backlash and the criticism in society against those robots. They never engage with us about why it's structurally true that it's more likely for robots to be discriminated against when your policy is passed by humans, because of the fact that people are frustrated at the idea of robots being given the same legal identity as humans, especially in the event where robots are generally not seen as humans. Recognize that in this argument, it does not matter if robots or sentient robots are actually equivalent to humans. The only thing that matters is that the society in general does not accept the fact that robots are embraced as humans as well, and that perception is enough to create that divide. Opposition tells you that robots are actually far better on our side of the house. Why is this so? Number one, we give you a tailored policy that gives rights to robots based on what they need and based on the actual recommendations robots want. Robots don't need education, they don't need the right to freedom of religion, and they don't need all of these other things that you would confer by giving them blanket human rights. They would need things like workplace protection, maintenance, and all of the other things that are unique to robots that are going to be much better operated under our side when we don't just blanket over the existence of robots by calling them human rights. We give them a much better policy in that we take into account the fact that these robots are fundamentally different to humans, and therefore those differences should be embraced. If the government bench wants to champion animal rights, they also have to concede with the fact that robot rights are fundamentally different than human rights. Second question, what is the comparative at the end of the debate? All you get on the government's world is a blanket policy where the human identity is conflated to robots, which incurs further backlash because of that and problems to the robots they claim they want to protect. On the opposition bench, you get a world where robot sentience is still respected and preserved, and the most practical policy in place in which we recognize the fact that humans and robots just cannot coexist in society as it is in the same legal identity. For all those reasons, please oppose.
All right. Thank you. I would like to thank the speaker for that speech. The timing was 4 minutes and 4 seconds. I should now call upon the Deputy Prime Minister from the government team to deliver their reply speech.
Hello.
Hi.
Like we understand that robots are different than humans, and we are, but in the end, but these robots, they are sentient robots which have similar feelings to us human, and that's why we from the get-go we have explained to you that we want to actually implement physical and mental well-being protection to these robots, right? So why is this the case? Because we have given analysis to you why these robots actually could be inflicted harms in their workplace, for example abuse, torture, for example, and whatever they're trying to say, like for example these robots only need maintenance, for example, like physical harms and maintenance, for example, or like they are being reprogrammed or whatever it is. So it is actually falls under the physical harms that we actually protect on our side. And in the end, we feel that on on our house, we better protect the robots at the end of the day, right? Um, Few responses. What have they said today? Like first and foremost, the comparative is on backlash, whereby they have explained to us like robots could actually protect themselves because they have AI, blah 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 blah, which feel we these are not true, right? Because in the end, even myself and yourself probably need some rules and regulations or actually policies to protect us from whatever it is, even though we do have emotions, even though we do have feelings, even though we could think better than those robots, but in the end we ourselves need those policies to actually protect us. So in the end, we feel that these robots actually need protection a little bit, especially in terms of the physical and mental well-being of the robots, especially when they are being used in such harsh conditions, like for example in manufacturing lines or oil and gas or wherever that is dangerous for those robots, right? Right. If you responses on their side, like they have talked about the robots being like people being frustrated because we gave them rights such we gave them human right, but in the end we're not giving the full extent of human right, we are just giving them physical and mental well-being and whatnot. Like they need to understand that the first step to actually recognize something under whatever world is basically giving them a little bit of right. For example, people recognizing LGBT movement, for example, um, by giving them a little bit of recognition so they could actually live in this world better and lead a better life in the end of the day. And that is what the government has trying to pursue, like giving this specific and unique community the rights to actually prosper and lead a better life at the end of the day, right? And they are simply saying that people will actually boycott those innovations, etc., blah blah blah, but they have never given you full the extent analysis on why that could actually happen. Why people actually boycott just because that they are given just because they were given human right doesn't mean that you're boycott. That is where my POI comes in, like whereby like do you actually alienate those technologies around you, or even do you alienate those LGBT community around you just because they have some rights of protection, right? That is not necessarily true under their side, right? And the comparative on innovation, we feel that we that is on our side at the end of the day, because we have given you full extent analysis on why it could actually give more protection to the innovators, which they have failed to address in their speech, and they were unresponsive for that. And whereby how we actually give these robots like the right, when we give them the right, we give them some international recognition or some sort of protection for them to actually live a better life, which they have not responded on that. And we also have explained to you why it is on our side when actually people and when these innovators are being taken care of, and they could actually being incentivized by this by those robots better, and at the end of the day they could actually produce and innovate more and more better technologies for the robot for them to actually function better in a sense, right? At the end of the day, the most important thing is we need to identify who has contributed more to the debate, and we feel that on our government batch we have showed to you um, why we should cater such right to the robot, just because it is very important for them to actually lead a better life at the end of the day. With that, I rest my case. Thank you.
All right. All right. Thank you. We have now come to the end of the debate. The timing was 4 minutes and 11 seconds. Therefore, debaters are asked to remain in this room while waiting for the adjudicators to make a decision. And adjudicators are reminded to move to the adjudicators discussion room in the Cisco WebEx via the link provided. With that, the House of Parliament is adjourned. Thank you.
Hi, am I audible?
Hi, yep.
Oh, okay. Um, Alia, I think I need your help to admit both of the other two edges inside this room so that they can provide their feedback as well.
Alright, sure. Sekejap. 6.
And I don't think you need to spotlight me because I think the other two edges, I'll be fine if you don't spotlight me.
Okay, kejap
Okay.
Sekejap I will buat layout baik-baik. Lagi
Better to
2.
spotlight more fame.
Okay.
No, I'm good. I'm good. So we'll just wait for Patrick and Shazwan.
Patrick and Shazwan.
Yeah. Are they in the backstage? Yeah. And
Yep.
Patrick.
But for Patrick kejap. Patrick kejap ya. 9 ke 9?
All right.
Okay, Patrick is there?
So,
Okay.
all right. I think everyone is here. So, should I give feedback first, or I'll straight away announce the win? Patrick. Uh, hello. Give me a moment, yeah. Okay, so the next round will be 10:30. I'll just give a brief. I'm not gonna provide feedback. I'm just gonna give the win now. So the win. So the motion is rejected. So the win is towards the opposition. So Patrick, you want to provide your feedback first for this motion? I mean for this round.
Okay, thanks, Vijay. So, for government and opposition, I think you did all right. This is quite a good debate, but unfortunately, the margin is quite high. Later, Eugene will tell you how much. So, I personally gave the win to the opposition because of that they have. I found that they have very good analysis. For example, the leader of opposition, they talked about how robots have different needs and how they have alternate and they also give an alternate policy, an alternate mechanism. And I like how the DLO didn't just follow up on that, but they gave a different point of view, a different slice, a different take of what they are talking about. For example, they spotlight the difficulties towards humans and robots, which are the two stakeholders. As you know, the stakeholders are the people who will be most affected by this motion, which are, of course, the robots themselves and the humans. So it is great that they talk about, they highlight the backlash that robots will face from humans, which is a totally higher level of thinking compared to if you just say that robots, it'll be worse for robots because their needs are not met or something like that. Something. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that the opposition came up and gave significant points that are not superficial, and they are also able to counter the government. But the government didn't do so bad. I mean, the government did still give us quite clear points. They met the definition. However, I think the prime minister can work on your definition a bit, as because if you notice, it was taken advantage by the opposition when they realized that the government didn't provide sufficient definition for human rights, didn't really address didn't like give elaboration on the characterization, the stakeholders, the status quo and all that. So it was taken advantage by the opposition, who managed to punch holes in the government. And also the opposition, somehow they kind of like twisted the motion in a way I did not expect. For example, I was expecting them to come up and talk about how we should not the reasons why we should not grant human rights. But I found that they took it apart and decided to go along the path of granting robot rights instead of human rights, why robot rights are better than human rights. So yeah, I think the government, you did need to figure out a way to counter, you need to figure out a way to say to counter why we should give human rights instead of robot rights. Maybe you can talk about how the separation between humans and sentient robots is blurred, because if robots are actually sentient, what separates them from humans? What is the difference between a sentient being and a human? Because if a robot can act as a human, can behave as a human, can do all the things that a human can do, what actually makes them different from humans? And also, you should come up with analysis like, um, if let's say we give rights, because robots can be dangerous, so let's say we give them if we give them robot rights, what is to stop them from doing harmful things? Whereas if we give robots human rights, we also give robots human restrictions, like they are bound to the laws that humans are bound to as well, such as not being able to kill other people or steal or do other stuff that robots could probably do better than humans. So in the end, that's the reasons why I give the win to the opposition. All right, Eugene.
All right, thank you, Patrick. So yeah, I totally agree with Patrick. Is that when the debate started, the government, you gave examples, like you started up with Sophia, the first ever robot, and then slowly you didn't really explain like what are like how human rights, like the coverage of human rights. But then in the opposition, they brought up like, okay, they need nutrition, they need shelter, they need education. These are the things that somehow robots do not really need. So it's like it gives us a picture that, all right, right now human right is not so applicable to robot already. I really wish that it would come up that, okay, and then also they didn't just reject human rights, the opposition, they kind of like they tweaked the human rights and turned it into robot rights. Now you can't, not like they do not agree that robots need to be protected. If in a way they say that robots do not need to be protected at all, then you would have that is a big disadvantage. But they tweak it and they also protect the robot in a way that they need, and not just blindly give them human rights to a point that it's not necessary. Right now, they point to me that it's not necessary at all to give total human rights, because there are some coverage that does not match up to the need of robots. So I think that is a very good, it's a clear defining win that for the opposition. And also opposition provide a lot of rationale and also like explanation on why they're doing what they do, which is like providing an alternative. And also I like how opposition, they are not afraid to go and do the clashes, like they're addressing what the government said as well, that like and also government, like your points could have been elaborated more with examples, because now right now we can see a lot of movies that they are sentient robots, like the sci-fi, the science fiction is like how the robots sort of have emotions, and and why you think that these examples are good examples for you to grant them human rights. So I heard someone brought up the good place, but you did not bring up the robot Janet, like how Janet was like very human. When she started off the series, you can see her growth from season 1 to season 4, how she sort of turned from a robot that only play by book, and she made friends, she even get married to a human. This kind of like thing that make people relate that robots can slowly grow. And like the opposition say, like the robots, they have feelings but they don't get empathy. But you can turn the tables, and government, you can turn the tables and say robots can slowly grow empathy by experiencing, because opposition admitted that all this empathy and sympathy that can grow from human interaction. So you can say they get to, like, these robots can have human interactions and be accepted into society to develop these feelings. So you missed that point, government. So I feel like if you brought that up, it will be good. It's a good point for you, where you can relate how these robots can grow and develop more feelings than just happiness and sadness and anger. And are built beyond it. Um, yeah, I think it's just some of the bit. It's just that the opposition provided very strong, not only strong points, but very strong explanation on how the points were, like how the points are applicable right now in the current status quo. But government just kind of provided a very idealized world, because opposition also addressed sort of the backlash that the humans would have done than boycotting it, because at the end of the day, humans wants to protect themselves first. They see themselves first. And also, I like the irony they give is that humans in certain countries do not get basic human rights, and now you want to grant a piece of metal, you know, human rights. I think that is very relatable. It's very ironic that you can't even solve like humans. They are not treating humans properly, and now they want to say that they are treating robots, same as humans. Yeah. Um. Yeah, the margin. So the margin is 10. When we keying in, we didn't realize, but then yeah, the margin is this. But then both sides, I think you have your own stance. It's just that I think government side could have provided more like mechanism and also your proper define your scope properly so that you don't get taken advantage of by the opposition. Yeah. So anyway, good luck for your next round. Bye bye.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. No more next round for
Thank
us.
you. Thank you. See ya. Or everyone can leave the
Right.
studio already.
Right. Thanks. Tips
Yeah.
from Sunway.
Sunway, good luck.
Thank
Good luck, guys.
Thank you. Thanks for the
you,
debate.
everyone.
Good luck to you guys too.
Tak boleh lihat. Oh. Hand broadcast.